Hello and welcome to a new special edition regarding the celebration of Eid al-Adha, the feast of sacrifice or the Greater Baram. Why we celebrate Eid al-Adha in Islam and how we celebrate Eid al-Adha or the feast of sacrifice here in Egypt. All this and more will be discussed during the course of this special edition today on the first day of Eid al-Adha or the Feast of Sacrifice, and I'm honored to be having with me in the studio celebrating such an Islamic holy occasion. I'm honored to be having Mr. Mohamed Khafif, the Islamic researcher. Mr. Mohamed, thank you very much for being with us today on this special edition, and the happy feast.
Thank you. The same to you and to all your audiences.
Yes, thank you very much. We'll be starting straight away with the upcoming report about how the Muslims around the world celebrate Eid al-Adha or the Feast of Sacrifice.
لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك.
Muslims all over the world are celebrating Eid al-Adha or Greater Baram, which is one of the major Islamic feasts. Eid al-Adha is celebrated annually on the 10th day of the 12th and last Islamic month of Dhul Hijjah, as it starts after the conclusion of Hajj, the annual pilgrimage to Mecca in Saudi Arabia by Muslims worldwide. During Hajj, Muslims remember trials and triumphs of Prophet Ibrahim. The Quran describes Ibrahim, peace be upon him, as follows. One of Ibrahim's main trials was to face the command of God to kill his own son. Upon hearing this command, he prepared to submit to God's will. When he was all prepared to do it, God revealed to him that his sacrifice had already been fulfilled. He had shown that his love for his Lord superseded all others, that he would lay down his own life or the lives of those dear to him in order to submit to God. As Prophet Ibrahim was about to sacrifice his son, Prophet Ismail, God stopped him and gave him a sheep to sacrifice in place of his son. To commemorate God's test of Ibrahim, many Muslim families sacrifice an animal and share the meat with the poor people.
Enjoy this happy day, Eid Mubarak, come on let's celebrate, Eid Saeed, let's enjoy this happy day, Eid Mubarak, come on let's celebrate, celebrate, let's celebrate, Allah Allah, thank you for this day.
Welcome back. You're still watching this special edition on Nile TV on the first day of the Feast of Sacrifice, celebrating Eid al-Adha in Egypt. How we celebrate it and why we celebrate Eid al-Adha here in Egypt, in the Muslim world as well. This is the first question, Mr. Mohammed. What can we learn from the story of the Feast of Sacrifice or Eid al-Adha?
Eid al-Adha, or the Feast of Sacrifice, is the fifth pillar of Islam.
Yes.
The first being the attestation of La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. The second is prayer. The third is zakah or charity. And for the fourth is the fasting of Ramadan. And the fifth is the pilgrimage, if we can call it that, because the word pilgrimage is actually not a very Muslim word, but it is very close to the meaning of Hajj.
Yes.
There are some features that stand out regarding Hajj in particular. Most of the rites of worship of Islam are either linked to time or not linked to time at all or place. The only rite of worship in Islam that is linked to both a time and a place is Al-Hajj. This is one very specific distinction. Another distinction is that although the Hajj is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, it is not compulsory to every Muslim. It is only compulsory to Muslims who have the ability to perform it. And
the physical ability?
Saying that, we would say that the physical ability,
yes,
the financial ability, even the social ability. Some people may not be able to leave their communities or leave their families and so
yes,
forth. So all those difficulties have to be overcome in order to be able to perform this rite of worship. Also, the Hajj is the one pillar of Islam where one sacrifices everything. And by everything,
leaving everything behind.
Yes, but by everything I mean that one sacrifices time, one sacrifices money, one sacrifices physical effort, and sacrifices presence in a place foreign time.
Yes.
This is a third and the most important distinction. We have to remember that Islam is a religion of logic and a religion of the mind.
Yes.
However, all that is related to the rites of worship are matters that should be submitted to and obeyed because they are ordained by God and they are not to be argued. We cannot argue why is the noon prayer 4 rak'ahs, for example.
Yes.
We cannot argue why is Ramadan the whole month and not 2 weeks, for example. So the rites of worship are to be submitted to, and their performance should be done as God Almighty has said and as Prophet Mohamed ﷺ has described them and done them before us. As for the celebration in various...
If we can focus on sacrifice. Mr. Mohamed, you said we sacrifice money, we sacrifice efforts, physical presence in somewhere foreign to us, money, effort and time. What is the lesson behind sacrificing all these things for a certain period of time?
I was about to come to that.
Yes.
Actually, all those sacrifices put us very, very close to where we shall be on the Day of Judgment. On the Day of Judgment, all this will be behind us. The times we have spent, the money we have earned or spent, and the places we have gone to, the people who belong to us and to whom we belong, all this will be behind us.
Yes.
And we shall be in a position where everybody is for himself. And the only thing that can stand up for any and each of us is his good deeds or his bad deeds. So this is actually some kind of rehearsal, because if we look at the attire of the Hajj, of the Hajj,
yes,
the pilgrims, you will find that all the pilgrims are wearing the very same attire. And it is very, very close in shape and color to the attire we will be covered in when we leave this world.
Yes.
So it is a reminder, remember the day will come where this rehearsal will be fulfilled completely. And of course the reward for the accepted and approved pilgrimage is the forgiveness of all the previous sins and returning home with a clean slate for the Muslim to begin a new life of piety and obedience to God and forfeiting all all things that displease him.
So what about the tasks for the Muslim during the Feast of Sacrifice?
During pilgrimage,
Yes.
there are several tasks that should be performed and in this sequence. The most important task or rite of Hajj is the presence at the Mount Arafat. This is where Prophet Abraham was supposed to sacrifice his son. And during that day, which is the 9th day of the Shahr, of the month of Dhul Hijjah, the 12th month of the Hijri calendar, during this day, all Muslims should be there for any period of time, starting noontime up till dawn the next day. At this day, Muslims are totally dedicated to supplication and to prayer and to reciting the Holy Quran and asking for whatever they wish in this world and whatever they wish in the afterworld, and for forgiveness of all their sins and so forth. And it is again also a symbol of the congregation of all Muslims from all over the world. You will find the black, the white, the yellow, the brown, and everybody is the same.
Yes.
And everybody is totally involved in seeking God's forgiveness and seeking God's grace. So this is the first rite of worship in pilgrimage. The next rite of pilgrimage is moving to a place called Al-Muzdalifah, where Muslims perform the prayer of Maghrib and Isha, and they start the process of stoning the devil. Of course, the stoning of the devil is a symbolic act in which a Muslim performs some rite that simulates abolishing evil from oneself. It is performed physically by throwing small stones at a certain place, but of course the devil is not that place, and
Yes.
it's just a symbolic performance of that will to abolish evil from one's person. After that, the Muslim returns to Mecca and performs tawaf, or walking around Al-Kaaba, which is the holiest place in Islam. And it symbolizes the admission and the submission that belief and God is the center of life of every Muslim. This act of tawaf, or rotating or moving around Kaaba, gives the impression and the lesson that God is the center of everything, and this is the house He has chosen to be His on earth. So this is why we do that. Next will be the sa'i. The sa'i is walking between two small hills.
Yes.
And these were the two hills between which our mother Hajar was trying to explore to find water for her son Ismail. And it is again a symbol that a Muslim should do his best,
Yes.
very best, to have a good life in this stage, and to have a good life in the next one. And the lesson here is very simple: is that the effort is not necessarily a direct reason for success, but it is necessary to be done. When we look at the story of or the history of our mother Hajar and
Yes.
Ismail, she did all this traveling between the two hills, looking for water, while the small feet of Prophet Ismail just hit the ground and brought out the Zamzam well. So the effort is rewarded, but sometimes the reward comes from places or from circumstances that
unexpected.
Totally unexpected.
Yes.
But the effort is required.
Making the effort itself.
Exactly. Making the effort is one thing, and the success comes from God of Almighty.
Yes, and speaking of celebrating Eid al-Adha, or the Feast of Sacrifice in Egypt and the world, let's hear the next song of Eid al-Adha.
لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك
لما بقينا في الحرم كل اللي من حاجة حرم قالها لربه كلمه وارتاح من والألم سيدنا النبي كان وسطنا طبطب علينا كلنا ومسح دموع المشتاقين سمع الشكاوي مننا ودعينا قلنا يا رحيم ومقام حبيبك الكريم وقف معانا في اللي جاي واغفر لنا شر القديم وقف لنا ولاد الحلال وارزقنا بر رزق الحلال كان الأذان هو الجواب وكأنه كان من صوت بلال الله أكبر من الجميع امشي في طريقه لن تضيع خلي التوكال دايما عليه اتحامى فيه عطفه البديع
سعيد let's enjoy this happy day عيد مبارك come on let's celebrate عيد سعيد let's enjoy this happy day عيد مبارك come on let's celebrate celebrate let's celebrate Allah Allah thank you for this day
Welcome back. You're still watching this special edition from Nile TV, celebrating the first day of Eid al-Adha, or the Feast of Sacrifice in Egypt and the world. The symbols or the lessons learned from Eid al-Adha, or the Feast of Sacrifice, include, Mr. Mohamed, as well as you said, one of the main pillars of Islam is charity and or zakah.
Yes.
What is the importance of this pillar in Islam?
Actually, there are several levels if we address the pillar of zakah.
Yes.
Let's address the few circles that are affected by zakah. First of all, it is a submission of God's will and the obedience to God's ordainments. That's the first level.
Yes.
The second level is a personal level, where a Muslim feels that, first of all, that he has satisfied his obligation. That's number one. Number two, it gives the feeling to Muslim of safety. The Muslim who pays zakah, because it reminds him that in case he is affected by poverty, then there will be those who will support him the same way he is supporting others at this time. So it gives a feeling of satisfaction and a feeling of safety at the same time. Now, if we look at a wider circle, the circle of the community, it goes without saying, of course, that this charity or zakah is something that helps the community, first of all, bond together and feel that all the people belong together and help each other. It is support to the poor who are in need of this zakah, and it is a symbol of Islam and Muslims. Because, as we said before, Islam is a religion of, can call it a muamala, a transaction. A Muslim transacts with God and transacts with his inner circle and with the whole community in general. So zakah is a manifestation, is a financial manifestation of this community spirit in Islam. In the meanwhile, the zakah brings in grace and blessing to a Muslim's life and wealth. Because what goes around comes around, as we know, and as we say, so what if we say about God? So if a Muslim does pay his zakah willingly and with an open heart, yes, definitely he will be rewarded both in this world and in the afterworld. So zakah is something that is very important in Islam, and those who think that if they don't pay zakah then they have saved money, they are very, very wrong.
Yes, speaking of the Islamic community in Egypt and in the world as well, the religious importance of Eid al-Adha, and I would like to know more about the social importance or the social connotation of the Feast of Sacrifice. What is or what should be happening between the individuals of the Islamic community in the country?
Well, as you said, celebrating Eid al-Adha in various countries, in various Muslim countries,
yes,
of course depends mainly on the social habits of each country. But there are unifying concepts that are common to all communities in Muslim communities. First of all, many of Muslim families do sacrifice a sheep or cow or
meat in general, yes.
Meat in general, and it is recommended that those who sacrifice are entitled to 1/3 of that sacrifice to themselves, 1/3 to friends, even if they are wealthy, and 1/3 to the poor. So if we look at it, you will find that a Muslim should enjoy himself, should make his friends happy, those around him happy, and should bring happiness to
sharing
those.
Happiness and joy.
Happiness on various levels.
Yes.
The personal, the societal, and the community level. Of course, it is again an opportunity for Muslims to gather and to spend this feast celebrating it in the homes of the grandfathers. Usually,
yes,
the home of the grandfather is the place of congregation in most Muslim celebrations. And it is also an opportunity for the parents to teach their children to celebrate Islam and to love their belief and to love the rites of worship that make them close to God and close to each other as well.
Yes, that is a very important point. Teaching the principles of Islam by the parents to the children, and teaching the children how they celebrate Islam in general and the Feast of Sacrifice in specific. What are the main pillars that should be taught by the parents to the children nowadays in the age of social media?
This is a very good question. One of the best ways of teaching children is teaching by silence.
Silence.
It is said this way,
Ah.
so that it would provoke a question, how? When we speak about teaching them silently, means teaching them by example. It is not lecturing them, do, don't do.
I should do it first.
I should be doing it, and my children should feel that I'm doing it willingly and that I'm happy doing it. And that not doing it is something that is almost out of the question. When the parents perform the rites of worship correctly and regularly and persistently, the children automatically absorb those habits and start by themselves trying to imitate their parents, even without their parents saying anything. So this is the best way to teach children, because sometimes not everybody likes or enjoys being lectured.
Yes.
Even small children. So
Especially nowadays.
Especially nowadays. So when younger people, let's say, not only children, when younger people feel that this is a way of life that is very normal and very regular, automatically they will join in. Social media today, excuse me, social media today is a double-edged weapon.
Yes.
It can be used very beneficially in spreading information and spreading teachings and spreading, etc., etc. And in the meanwhile, it can be used in spreading all that is not so good or not so pious. So it is the parents' role to have some kind of monitoring and control of what their children do with social media. And this is something that we have addressed before in a previous episode, is that new inventions are scientific introductions into society.
Yes.
There has to be some kind, I don't know how, I can't say how, but there has to be some kind of moral evaluation of the value of such inventions, because
Before using them.
for using them, because if we leave it just open to everything and to everybody, there can be a lot of harm can happen. And of course, younger people are not fully aware, and not very fully in control of their desires and their feelings and so forth, so they can easily be trapped into the disadvantageous part of those inventions. So parents, schools, the community itself should have some kind of monitoring of what is being done with social media. I'm not suggesting that they should be restricted or should be banned or something. No, the point is that teach them to find the right way to use it.
Yes.
The beneficial way to use it.
And if it is useful to the society or not.
Absolutely, absolutely. Some of the applications are very damaging to the society, and some applications are wonderful. We have to admit that. But how to lure our youngers to go towards the beneficial part rather than the bad part? This is our role, of course, as parents and as teachers and as guides.
Speaking of the Feast of Sacrifice, do you see it as an opportunity to be ending wrangling and fighting and quarreling between the members of the same family as well?
Well, if you look at the essence of Eid al-Adha, or the Feast of Sacrifice,
yes,
you will find that it is basically a lesson in obedience from son to father, and a lesson of love from father to son, and a lesson of love of God to both of them. So if we indulge in the spirit of the Feast of Sacrifice, we will find that it is mainly a feast of love.
Yes.
And we have to look at it this way and use it this way and enjoy it this way.
Yes, so it's more about family time and ending disputes and ending wrangling. So what do you say to the children or the teenagers who want to be sharing Eid al-Adha or the Feast of Sacrifice with not their families, but with their friends?
Well, there is always time for friends, but in feasts and so forth, it is important that the younger ones enjoy their time with their parents, because there will come a time when they will regret the time they have lost not enjoying it with their parents.
Yes.
Because parents are not here all the time.
Yes,
and when they leave, they do not come back.
Yes. So we will be heading to the second report of the evening of the special edition of celebrating Eid al-Adha, or the Feast of Sacrifice, the first day of Eid al-Adha in Egypt. And we'll be watching the upcoming report about the message of the Feast of Sacrifice, peace and devotion. So let's see it.
ونصر عبده وعز جنده وهزم الأحزاب وحده لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر كبيرا والحمد لله كثيرا وسبحان الله بكرة وأصيلا لا إله إلا الله وحده صدق وعده ونصر عبده وأعز جنده وهزم الأحزاب وحده لا إله إلا الله.
Eid al-Adha is an important religious holiday celebrated by Muslims worldwide. The feast brings a message of peace, sacrifice, and devotion in the name of Allah. On the first day of Eid, Muslims gather early in the morning in outdoor locations or mosques to perform Eid prayers, which consists of a prayer and a sermon. After Eid prayers, Muslims usually scatter to visit various family and friends, give gifts, especially to children, and make phone calls to distant relatives to give well wishes for the holiday. These activities traditionally continue for 4 days in most Muslim countries. The entire 4-day period is an official government school holiday. The meat from the sacrificed animal is prepared to be divided into 3 parts. The family retains 1/3 of the share, another third is given to relatives, friends, and neighbors, and the remaining third is given to the poor and needy. The charitable practices of Muslims are demonstrated during Eid al-Adha by efforts to see that no impoverished person is left without a share in the sacrificial meat during these days. Many believe that even though Eid al-Adha comes once a year, the spirit of sacrifice and peace should remain all year round.
لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك.
Welcome back. We saw in the past report the ways of celebrating Eid al-Adha, or the Feast of Sacrifice, on the first day in Egypt. Mr. Mohamed al-Khafif, the habits of celebrating Eid al-Adha, or the Feast of Sacrifice, in Egypt now and back in the past. How do you see the difference between them?
Back in the past,
Yes.
there was no social media.
Yes.
And further back in the past, there were no phones. So the only way for people to communicate with each other was face to face. And this was a huge advantage that we are missing now because of the ways of communication that we have now. As you were saying a few minutes ago, the means of communication are putting us apart rather than putting us closer together.
Yes.
So unfortunately, unlike what was happening in the past, people now congratulate each other by sending messages and making phone calls rather than gathering together and being present. Being present is something very important that we are missing right now. But of course, the main feature of Eid al-Adha is the sacrifice of the sheep and so forth.
Yes.
So the banquets are a major part of this celebration. And you will feel that the whole city smells of fried mutton, and everybody is destroying every kind of diet that he was performing.
Yes.
And but of course it's for a few days, but those few days are more than enough to fulfill the desires of everybody in food.
Yes, exactly. The Feast of Sacrifice is being celebrated over a few days, but after that we return to work once again. What can we learn from the efforts, as you said in the first part of the special edition, making efforts in all of the lives of the Muslims everywhere on the planet? How can we take those lessons after the Feast of Sacrifice to be going with them to work and applying them in work?
Well, pilgrimage or a Hajj is simply a declaration of a new beginning. So if we absorb this concept correctly, then after the feast, we should start a new beginning in everything, in our relationship with each other, in our work, in our way of treating others, in our way of performing all the duties that a Muslim should be performing. And in the meanwhile, a new beginning in forfeiting all that has been harmful to us in the past, either in deeds or habits and so forth. So if Eid al-Adha is not enough in alarm for a new beginning, then nothing can be. Really, it is the feast of new beginnings.
Yes. What about the bad habits or the bad deeds that the Egyptians or the Muslims in general need to be staying away during celebrating the Eid al-Adha?
Well, it is not only during Eid al-Adha, actually. One of the things that are very indicative of us, unfortunately, I'm very sorry to say that.
Yes.
But all our worship rites are linked with time. But unfortunately, we are not exactly the best people in keeping our promises, especially regarding time. So maybe this will be an opportunity for us to remember that keeping promises is something that is very important in Islam, and it is mentioned in the Holy Quran several times, and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has stressed on that hundreds of times. One of the most important aspects of keeping promises is keeping promises of time. If we agree to meet at 5 o'clock, okay, then it shouldn't be 5:30. Okay, it shouldn't be 4:45 as well.
Yes.
Because we may not be ready. But it should be maximum 5:15. But now let's say meet at 5. I'll wait for you till 6 o'clock. If I don't come 7, then you will leave 8.
Yes.
Well, this is not.
So I'd be wasting 3 hours of my life.
Absolutely,
Yes.
wasting time and wasting effort, because if we are fair to ourselves, time is everything. Time is money, time is effort, time is our
The
future.
most valuable thing we have.
Absolutely, the only thing we have. And then we translate it to anything we need. Both good or bad, as we are talking now.
Yes.
So we really need to return to the basic concepts of Islam and the spirit of Islam in keeping promises. Keeping promises is something that is very important. If our audiences would like to address the first 11 verses of Surah Al-Mu'minun, they will find the description of a good Muslim. One of them is keeping promises. One of them is fulfilling what you are entrusted with.
Yes.
So this is what we should do.
And we need to be keeping promises to God as well. We need to be praying 5 times a day on time. What is the importance of praying in the first place as a main pillar of Islam, and praying on time for ourselves, for the benefit of us?
Well, praying, as you said, it is the most important pillar of Islam,
Yes.
and from which nobody is exempted. Everybody should perform prayer, even if someone is sick, if one is paralyzed, if one, well, there is no excuse in not performing prayer. Of course, prayers are very generously or graciously rewarded by God, and of course they cleanse the spirit, because if we really feel that we are facing God 5 times a day, who would dare to do something bad in between? And who wouldn't think of trying to do something good in between, so that when he stands in prayer, he would be proud that, God, I have tried. I've done my best with your guidance, so I'm praying for you to accept what I've done. So prayers are there and should be there all the time.
So what about the other habits that we need in Islam in general, that we need to be emphasizing and highlighting for the lives of the Muslims, like keeping promises and being on time here in Egypt and in Islam in general? One of the main advice for the people or the Muslims, in your opinion, that they need to be hearing on the Feast of Sacrifice, that we need to be keeping?
Well, one advice is look at the Hajj or the pilgrims, look at what they are wearing. Remember, at the very end, we will be wearing that. So if we don't take this into consideration and make do with what time we have left, we will be losing a lot.
In the Quran, what are the main surahs that are speaking about Hajj or pilgrimage in Islam?
Actually, there is a whole chapter about Al-Hajj, among other verses in other chapters. But there is a whole chapter in the Holy Quran,
yes,
about Al-Hajj and about how important it is, and about what the general principles that Muslims should follow during the period of Al-Hajj. So those who would like to know about Al-Hajj from the Holy Quran, they can refer to this surah.
Yes, exactly. Do you have any advice, specific advice from God to the pilgrims through this chapter or surah?
Well, very simply, don't waste the huge efforts and the huge sacrifices you have done after Hajj. You have the opportunity to start with a clean slate. So don't waste what you have done, and don't waste the clean slate and start doing bad things again. It would be a total waste that usually cannot be recovered.
Yes, and of course we spoke about the efforts, the amount of efforts that the Muslim needs to be doing in his life, at work and, of course, outside of work, to maybe keeping promises to God
Certainly
itself.
so, because, well, actually, if a Muslim looks at it in the right way, he will find that he is dealing with God in every activity he does in his life. In his family, in his work, in his relationship with others, in his relation with the community. All this will finally reflect on his relationship with God. Because God is the all-seeing and the all-knowing. And whatever good is done is rewarded, and whatever bad is done, hopefully will be forgiven or not.
Yes.
So why take the risk? No need at all to take a risk.
Yes. Islam is also, as you said, Mr. Mohammed, earlier in the special edition, that Islam is about logic. What can be said to the non-Muslims watching us right now on the first day of the Feast of Sacrifice, that they could be convinced that Islam is about logic and understanding the lives of the Muslims?
Well, it is not only pilgrimage or al-Hajj.
Yes.
If non-Muslims address and try to study the basic principles of Islam, mainly from the Holy Quran and the Sunnah and so forth, they will find that everything that has to do with a person, his family, his community and so forth, is all subject to logic. And when Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, I have been sent to complete and enhance the moral code of humanity, they should think that the moral values of Islam are not different from the moral values of all other beliefs. And even all those, even the non-believers finally reach a certain stage where they are convinced that there has to be some kind of moral code for everything. So the only difference between us and them in Islam is that, okay, we have chosen to use the moral code that was sent to us by God. You are trying to invent a moral code by trial and error, which will cost you generations, and then you'll find that it is exactly what Islam said. So why waste the time and effort again?
Yes, but the story of the Feast of Sacrifice and the Prophet Ibrahim and the Prophet Ismail is about obeying God as well. What is the lesson that could be learned from sacrificing everything, sacrificing the life of your son, and your son is accepting willingly?
Well, the lesson here is that the love of God supersedes everything. And that God's will, again, supersedes everything. So we have to do our best in this life, but we have to know that what God wills is what is going to happen. And we have to accept that, and to accept it willingly, because we cannot, even if we try to object to it, our objection will mean nothing. And will just be a burden on us rather than a comfort. So do your best, try your efforts, but accept God's will.
Yes, Mr. Mohamed Al-Khafif, the Islamic researcher, thank you very much for being with us today on this special edition celebrating the first day of Eid al-Adha, or the Feast of Sacrifice, and a happy feast.
Thank you very much. It was absolutely my pleasure.
Pleasure is all mine. And this brings us to the end of this special edition coming to you on Nile TV, celebrating the first day of the Feast of Sacrifice, or Eid al-Adha in Egypt. Thank you for watching, and a happy feast. Goodbye.
Let's enjoy this happy day. Eid Mubarak, come on, let's celebrate. Eid Saeed, let's enjoy this happy day. Eid Mubarak, come on, let's celebrate, celebrate. Let's celebrate. Allah, Allah, thank you for this day. let's enjoy this happy day. Eid Mubarak, come on, let's celebrate. Eid Saeed, let's enjoy this happy day. Eid Mubarak, come on, let's celebrate. Eid Saeed, let's enjoy this happy day.